Coming to you live from Brea, California. Coming to you live on the internet. Hello. It is Mike and Andy. It is the Vox podcast. We're so glad you're with us. What episode are we on, Andy?
28.
Oh, that's my wife. Hold on. Let's see. Let's talk to Mrs. Erie. Hi, Mrs. Erie. You're on the podcast.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Now,
Okay.
Is it true that you celebrated a birthday this week?
I did.
And how'd your husband do at arranging birthday festivities?
He did amazing.
And how
He
great
did amazing.
and how great a kisser is he?
Oh, awesome.
Okay. All right. Was
Do you
there
want lunch?
was there anything you needed, hon?
Yeah, do you want lunch?
Yeah, I want lunch. I'll take a double scoop of you with applesauce.
Okay, do you want anything from In-N-Out?
No, thank you.
All right, love you, bye.
I'm only eating vegetables now. That is a false statement. So that's Mrs. Erie making an early appearance. Now we have another guest in the studio, in the Vox headquarters studio in Brea, California. This is Dr. Tim Muelhoff. It's a very Italian name. Comes from an Italian background. Hello, Tim. Say hello to the internet.
Man, it is great to be here,
It
internet.
is. It is, internet. So he's in the Vox headquarters. He's not wearing the uniform. He has shorts on, and his torso is covered, so that's disappointing. But before we talk about Tim and why Tim is here, Andy has some big news, right? So Andy, so we're either going to talk about the fact that you're having a third child, that you just moved, or that the Ducks lost in Game 7 again to a team that was clearly inferior. Which one of those is the issue this morning?
It is unfortunately the latter.
The latter?
That is very true. And
Now, Tim, you are a hockey person too.
I am from Detroit.
that's right.
Detroit is hockey town. So, yeah, hockey
Okay.
is God's sport,
Okay,
Mike.
sure.
This is,
Sure.
I feel for Andy. Last night, it's too soon for me, man. Last night they lost.
Jesus saves, but Gretzky scores on the rebound. Right? Isn't that how it goes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So sorry, Andy. We love you. I'm just so grateful that we're done with that whole line of conversation.
Yeah.
When does hockey season begin again?
Begins in the fall.
Oh,
Next season.
well,
Yeah,
okay.
something like
that
that.
lowers it down.
September.
Okay, so we have a break, which is nice. So Tim is, what's your PhD in?
So my wife gets a kick out of this. It's technically marital communication. So Mike,
good
have a
Lord.
PhD
Good Lord.
in marital communication. My wife would say I'm good at the theory part of it.
Yes, exactly. See, there's some areas of expertise you never want to claim for yourself, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
So Tim is a dear friend and a guy that I knew way back in the day at Miami of Ohio. He was on staff with Campus Crusade, now Crew. He confronted me about liking Guns N' Roses back in the day. He has no memory of this, but he has since matured, and I have since thrown away and repurchased Guns N' Roses about a dozen times. So Axel can thank me later. Now,
Do you guys also bond around how much hair you guys both have?
Well, yes. We
yes.
admire each other. Very much.
Well, yeah, but you go. I mean, you use a razor, right?
I
You're
do
polished,
use a razor.
right?
Yeah, I do.
I go to the Clippers, like the number 0.
Oh.
Yeah, I want a little shading. I mean, you look very good. Now, so if you can imagine, in the Vox headquarters, there's a lot of skin showing, and on the heads and on the torsos. Andy is wearing his morning some sort of camouflage outfit that just says, he was ready for battle and he was defeated tragically.
Yeah, right.
Now, Tim,
battle to bring the 90s back.
Now, Tim, oh my goodness, yes, those are like MC Hammer pants. Now, Dr. Tim, as I call him, or Dr. T, or Mr. T, any of those he answers to, has written a book that I very much love and is very much in the Vox tradition. So it's called I Beg to Differ, and the subtitle is Navigating Difficult Conversations with Truth and Love. And I don't know, it seems like maybe there are a few difficult conversations that are going on in our world right now. And so I thought Tim would be a super fun guy to have a conversation with, because I read his book. And I thought, man, there isn't a lot. I mean, we're all, whether it's in a family relationship, a parent-child, whether it's a marital relationship, so it's a husband and wife, whether you've been divorced and you're trying to like share children with your former spouse, whether you are dating, I mean, in the workplace, like the applications of this sort of thing seem pretty innumerable, and there doesn't seem like there's much that we learn outside of doing it poorly that's out there.
It's a crazy time to be a comm theorist. On
Yes.
one hand, we are communicating more than we ever have communicated before via technology. If Facebook were its own country, it'd be the third largest country in the world.
Boom.
Only lagging behind India and China. But we're also doing it very poorly.
Right.
There's a woman named Deborah Tannen at Georgetown. She's a linguist who has dubbed this title the argument culture, that we approach everything as if it's a verbal slugfest, that we argue and we don't find common ground, we don't listen, we don't have nuance. It's either left or right, and there's no middle anymore.
That's right.
So in a way, we're communicating a ton, but boy, it just seems like in a lot of different realms, we're doing it really poorly.
Well, and I dare every now and again to open up my Facebook feed, and people really do communication well on Facebook. I've just found social media really allows for a deep exchange of views.
It's like a 4D communication experience. Like it takes nuance to an entire new
Oh
level.
my goodness! Wow. So I brought up Donald Trump with my sweet mother, who I love, and we realized soon that we needed not to go there. I adore her. She is a big fan of the Trumpster, and I'm not so much. I'm going to vote for myself as president, and that's just fine with me. Now, one thing though we want to talk about is, what do you think has made, if we grant that this is sort of an outrage or argument culture, what are pieces of our world that have facilitated that?
I think an isolationism has fostered that. In other words, I grow up in my community.
Right.
And I interact with people in my community. And if I don't like the public school, talking about the Christian community, I simply get out of the public school and I go form an even deeper isolationist type community. Groupthink, those who study groupthink would say the biggest problem with groupthink, when you're just around people who think like yourself, is that you demonize the other crowd. And so I think what's happened today is the left has demonized the right has demonized the left. Christians, we demonize other denominations, other systems of thought. And so pretty soon, there's no middle ground anymore. We've excluded the middle, and now we are on these opposite sides, and we are yelling at each other. Common ground is seen as condoning another viewpoint.
Yes.
And so all of that kind of stuff.
That's so true.
I get very angry
Whoa.
when my community, they present a caricature of a different position, right?
Right.
So you listen to this position and you go, well, that person's an idiot.
Right.
Like, who would think that? That's
Right.
craziness. And it fuels my anger when we don't take any time to research or think about how that person arrived at his or her beliefs.
Right.
And we need to do that.
That's one bit that you threw in here. So you've got this 4-step way of navigating difficult conversations, and it's not steps, actually, it's postures of heart.
Yeah.
And practices. And what I loved, where is it? Here it is. In the heat of the moment, we give the other person the bottom line of our convictions. We never give them the backstory of how those convictions developed. So I may be totally opposed to the transgender community using whatever restroom they self-identify as, but I'm not going to give you any backstory to that, or I may be totally open to that and not give you any backstory to that. So it becomes actually a little easier to demonize because we're just sharing the bottom line and not the journey. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a Longfellow quote I stick in the book where he says, if we knew the secret history of our enemies, there'd be enough pain that it would produce for us compassion. So to know about the transgendered community, right, the pain that they've gone through, they're an at-risk community.
Right.
Whatever you think about the transgendered bathroom issue, statistics show that the transgendered community are at risk, that 41% the transgendered community has thought about suicide or attempted suicide. And then you look at bullying rates as they go through, elementary school into junior high into high school. these individuals have lived a very hard life. And if we don't know that, then my rhetoric becomes really harsh, right? And I'm just exploring ideas. I'm not exploring people anymore.
Right.
And we're called to not tolerate people. We're called to love people. And I'm afraid our rhetoric is so harsh. Regardless if we ever sign off on how we're going to do these bathrooms, right? If we're going to have transgendered bathrooms, if we're going to allow people to enter into whatever bathroom, my goodness, let's start the conversation with compassion and care and show that, hey, you're an at-risk community. We absolutely need to do something. Maybe we can't do what you're advocating, but my goodness, we got to do something. We got to love you because you're part of our community and we truly do care about you.
But the minute you open the door to that, to finding common ground, to compassion, to empathy, you then, because there is no middle, in the eyes of the demons on both sides, you're either with us or you're against us, and
Absolutely.
you get labeled a liberal or a progressive or a heretic or whatever for even entertaining the idea that public restrooms can be public in ways maybe that we're not all comfortable with.
Yeah, and nobody believes the best of me anymore. So,
Right.
so if I do reach out to the transgender community in a way that I think is fresh, unexpected,
Right.
then I get hit from my base that says, okay, that's compromise.
Right.
We because I have a radio spot that I do once a month, and we tackled Mike Huckabee one day. Remember, Mike Huckabee was speaking to the Religious Broadcasters Association, and in it he made.
I have not followed the career of Mike Huckabee
closely.
I just want to confess that.
Nor have I.
Okay.
But in it, he said this. He said, boy, I kind of wish today I could go to my coach in high school and say, Coach, I'm kind of feeling feminine today, and I'd kind of like to pop into the women's locker room, right? And it got a laugh. You can watch this on YouTube. It got a laugh from the audience, and my thought was, my goodness, are we going to compare the pain and suffering of a Caitlyn Jenner
Right.
with a high school heterosexual boy who wants to get a free peep show?
Right.
Now, but when I did this on the radio program, though, Mike,
Right.
oh my goodness, the calls!
Oh yeah.
I just got slaughtered.
And it was
Broke
by,
the internet.
and it was by people who were demonizing you that would have looked at your credentials and said, "Oh, he should be one of us."
That's right.
Right? Go ahead.
And what I was critiquing Mike on is that communication is on two levels, not one. One is the content level. That's
Right.
absolutely our message. But then it's the relational level. That is the amount of compassion between two individuals. It's the amount of respect, acknowledgement. So I simply said, when I responded to some of these people who called in, was to simply say, listen, I might not even be critiquing his content. I'm
Right.
simply saying, where's the compassion?
Right.
Where's the empathy?
Right.
And where's the love for this community, even if we ultimately disagree with them? That's what I was critiquing. Mike Huckabee was, let's start with compassion.
Well, and it's so antithetical to the way of Jesus. So these are Christians who claim to follow Christ, the Christ who, when confronted with a woman caught in the very act, not going to, not coming home from, the act.
Yeah.
And they didn't bring the guy, which I find just so, beautifully like patriarchal. But as we all know, he doesn't condemn her. He doesn't condone her. He changes the whole tone of the conversation. And so you have this Jesus that leads with compassion to the broken and harshness often to the religious elite.
Yeah.
And we flipped it, right? Now the religious elites just love patting themselves on the back in their isolation. And when we come across somebody, like I got heat for calling Caitlyn Jenner Caitlyn.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
He's Bruce. He's
That's right.
Bruce is what people would say to me. He's Bruce. Call him Bruce. He's not Caitlyn.
Come on.
So imagine you're going to have lunch with Bruce Jenner, right, as Caitlyn.
Right.
So I would say, just from a pure communication standpoint, right, if we're just talking about persuasion 101, you want to have what we call a soft startup to the conversation. You don't want to have a harsh conversation. So if you're sitting across from Bruce, I would ask you as a Christian, what are you hoping is going to happen during this lunch? And let's say that person says, I really would like to introduce him to the gospel and present Christ's love to that person. I said, okay, so is the very first words out of your mouth calling him Bruce when he wants to be identified as Caitlyn? Guess what? That's a harsh startup.
Right.
And now there's defensiveness.
Right.
What does the book of Proverbs say? An offended brother is like a fortified city. So do you really want to start that way?
Right.
The acknowledgement part and the respect part is to say, hey, listen, Caitlyn,
Right.
I admire you for your journey. And by the way, I admire you that when you won the ESPY Award, the Arthur Ashe ESPY Award, you took that time to speak for the transgendered community. I admire that.
Yeah.
I admire your journey.
But see, to many, you can't say that
You can't.
without condoning it.
No,
Yeah,
you're done.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
the minute
I mean,
that-
you're speaking from a place of compassion, like modeling exactly what you're talking about. But so many folks
Yep.
can't even.
So you're soft on
Yeah.
sin. You know, you're buying into the cultural soup. And so how do you respond to those people
Well, this is where our conversations, Mike, have been
without cussing?
so helpful.
Because I'll tell them right now what I think of that.
Harsh startup. Warning.
Yep.
Warning.
Yes.
No, this is where our conversations about Jesus table fellowship has been so helpful.
Yes.
In the fact that I don't think Jesus's highest value was to be seen as not condoning sin.
Yes.
I think he reached out to people that were scandalous.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, many of these table fellowship scenes were out in the public, right? That
Yep.
people could see it.
That's right.
And he is meeting with noted sinners.
Right.
And it just didn't seem to bother him because he wasn't equating the two. That I could have table fellowship with you, and that is not my condoning your sin. And I think the church is stuck sometimes that we just can't have the appearance
Right.
of sin. And I'm going to say, I just don't know if that's our highest
No,
value.
somewhere along the line, our greatest fear was that we would be accused of condoning sin.
Yes.
And rather than God knowing our heart, in the same way Naaman asks Elijah, "Hey, I've got to go worship with this king,
Yeah.
after his healing, but God knows my heart, right? I'm going to pack up some dirt from Israel. We're okay, right?"
Yeah.
And Elijah says, "Go in peace." That God knows. Instead of worrying about that, it is, well, I don't want them to think that I approve. When did that become a biblical value or a biblical practice, right?
Yeah.
Because Paul only does that if he gives "I don't approve." It's to Christians who should know better.
That's
It's
right.
never to people who are outside the church.
So let me give you an illustration that I
Do
think
it.
is kind of what the basis of the book was on.
Yeah.
So in my class, I do something. I require my students to do something that when they're done doing it, they'll be part of the 1% of American Christians. And that is they read the Quran cover to cover. Right? When a Christian does that, we never read the faith, the holy books of another faith tradition. So my students will read it cover to cover. They'll be part of the 1% of American Christians who have ever read a book of a different faith tradition. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we have a credibility problem.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
Aren't
anything.
all Muslims evil?
Yeah, I don't know anything about postmodernism. I don't know anything about
Right.
Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. I just know my perspective, and we wonder why we have a credibility problem. Well, when I first assigned the topic, and by the way, this was pre-tenure, I teach at Biola University. It's pre-tenure, so I got calls from parents saying, I did not send my daughter to a Christian university to read the Quran. And I said, can I ask you why you sent her?
Ooh, good
And she
question.
said, well, I want her to be a Christ follower. And I said, do you know that 1 out of 5 people in the world self-identify as a Muslim? And we're called to take Jesus' love and gospel to everybody. So we better know the perspective. And by the way, just reading it doesn't mean that they're agreeing with it. Now, my students are fine to read it if we're going to rip it to shreds, right? We're going to analyze it and attack it and stuff. So they're kind of blown away when the first assignment is, hey, give me 10 areas where the Bible agrees with the Quran.
Yeah.
There's 50.
Yeah.
Just give me 10. Well, that's when we start. And one dad said to me, and I appreciate the heart of these parents. One dad said, listen, how will you feel if somebody in your class reads the Quran and walks away from the faith? And I said, you know what? If that all it took was the reading of a
didn't-
book,
They didn't have
that
faith
would be
to
a greater
begin with.
concern.
yeah, and better to happen now
Yeah.
that we can actually address it and put the pieces back together.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for us to expose ourselves to a really interesting
Well,
world out
how
there.
well has this kind of protectionism done with our kids? Right? So every measure that you can possibly measure indicates they're fleeing the institutional organized church.
That's right.
And it's because they're coming into contact with good people who believe different things.
Yeah.
And seem to advocate really compelling ideas. In some ways that seem more moral than the Christian teaching they'd received.
Oh, absolutely. And certainly more compassionate.
Oh my goodness,
More
yes.
compassionate. Hey, so let me introduce you. Let me get academic just for a second.
Oh, boy.
And mention something.
We don't do that here.
Mention something. Something called inoculation theory. This is a really cool theory. So inoculation theory is basically this idea. The guy who came up with it did a fascinating study. He basically took a group of individuals, broke them into 4 groups, and gave them a totally bogus argument. The bogus argument was that brushing your teeth actually promotes tooth decay, because you're wiping away natural antibodies in your saliva, and it actually promotes tooth decay. 4 different groups. One group was given the article and not told anything about it. Just read this article. The second group was told just brushing your teeth principles. Of course, brushing your teeth is good and blah. You should do it 3 times a day, blah, 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 blah. Right? And then you get a group is told you're going to read something that's going to challenge long-held beliefs. And then the last group, you're actually told a little bit about this argument and given some different ways to think about it.
Okay.
So the guy who did this wanted to know which group would have the most movement. You know which group had the most movement? It was group number 2. If all you do is present people with positive arguments and never tell them about counter arguments, good counter arguments, you actually make them susceptible to weak arguments. So if in the church, all we do is talk about pro-traditional marriage,
right,
we talk about defending the Bible and they never read anything else. So we shield them because we care about people.
Sure.
We shield them from these arguments. If inoculation theory is true, you just made them more susceptible to weak arguments when they leave our church or graduate from our university. We're doing no favors to these individuals whatsoever.
Oh, and that's why the new atheists have gotten so much traction. They're not offering new arguments. I mean, Dawkins isn't really doing anything new.
Yeah.
But it's so compelling, or Sam Harris, and it's not been heard or engaged with by people.
Yes.
So one of my kids have all sorts of faith questions. And it's so tempting just to give them the answer and move on from there.
That's right.
But instead, we spend a lot of time talking about how great it is to have questions and how having questions that's not an expression of unfaith. It can often be an expression of faith. Right?
Oh, great, yeah.
So it's so interesting to me how if that's true on a micro scale, how much more then?
Oh, how much more?
Then we think, okay, protecting them is really protecting them. So you have your students read the Quran.
Yeah.
First thing they do is identify areas of agreement.
Yeah, well, we agree with each other.
Yes.
Same thing with Nietzsche. Right. All of philosophy goes through the doorstep of a man named Nietzsche, who said that God was dead, no longer useful, the idea of God. Well, we don't read him. Right. We seldom expose ourselves to the great thoughts of Nietzsche. I just read a book, by the way, that was talking about if you ask the most quoted person, but take a look at databases on printed books, in the last, I think they said 100 years, guess who's the most person quoted the most in the last 100 years?
Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson was second. That was good.
Okay.
No, it was a man named Michel Foucault.
Yes.
Now, if you mention that name to most Christians,
right,
they will look at you and say, who?
Yeah, I'm like, who?
Think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, think about that. So a guy that is influencing everybody in academia, particularly, Christians are like, I have, like, what is he? What does he say? Well, this is what he says. And they're like, oh, that's really good. I think I agree with that. So if our only philosophy is to lock the liquor cabinet, right? It's locked. In my house, you will not drink because the liquor cabinet is locked. Now, as soon as they get outside the house and every liquor cabinet is unlocked,
boom,
that's when we learn if they bought into our values.
That's what happened to me.
Oh, really?
No, not really. No, I've never had a liquor cabinet. But go ahead.
So I say, and I get why parents, this freaks us out, right? We get asked questions like, I don't know, like what about those who have never heard of Jesus?
Right.
If he's the only way to get to God, and most of human history, people have never even heard the name of Jesus. How in the world is that like fair?
Right.
That God would judge them on a person they never heard? Well, I can imagine a parent being asked that question by one of their kids and just, looking at them with like deer caught in headlights.
Right.
And you say, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. It's
yes,
like, I have no idea.
Yes.
How do you respond to that? So I get that we're kind of fearful.
Yeah.
But if inoculation theory is true, we are preparing our kids to go out into the real world, outside our homes, and they are going to get hit with questions. An articulate person talking about same-sex marriage, an articulate person presenting Hinduism, Buddhism, and our students are going to be like sheep, our kids, like sheep being led to slaughter because we thought we were protecting and loving them.
Right.
And in actuality, we gave them no antibodies and we sent them into a world of disease.
Right. So part of what you promote in this book is, and that's one of the steps, is finding common ground.
Yeah.
Right? So what are the 4, just real quick?
Okay, so the very first one is, hey, listen to this person.
No.
Don't assume that you know what this person's going to say. Book of Proverbs, Proverbs 18:12 says
boy.
this. It says,
We don't quote the Bible on this program.
Bible.
okay, Jewish wisdom literature.
Yes, that's better.
Jewish
Lovely
wisdom.
Jewish
I
poetry.
went to secular schools.
What's the Quran say?
Jewish literature. I think it's fascinating. It says, it is folly and shame to a person to speak before listening. Now, I think we get the folly part, right? I was on the debate team in college, so my poor wife starts to say something, I'll just jump in like, boom, and disagree. And she's like, that's not even what I was talking about. And my response is,
But you were
but if
going
it
to.
was, that's a good response. But I think it's fascinating. The ancient writer would say, shame. It is shameful for you to speak before listening. You are belittling this person. We bestow honor on a person when I sit and listen to their perspective and not challenge it. That's step number one. Step number two is, but why do you believe this? Step number one is you can tell me you're for same-sex marriage or
Right.
you're a Buddhist. Step two is, but how did you arrive at that?
That's the backstory we
That's
were
the
talking about
backstory.
earlier.
Yeah.
Is that you just didn't hit this in a vacuum.
That's right. Nobody was born a Christian, born an atheist, born Democrat, Republican. It was through a series of events you arrived at this present moment. One feminist theorist says you can't take a person's life out of history. So I want to know your history. Like, how did you arrive at this moment? Step number three is, okay, after listening to those first two steps, where do I agree with you?
That's right.
Boy, we are hardwired in the church to be listening for where I'm eventually going to attack your perspective. So, but then when you stop and say, no, what was good about it? Where's the common ground?
Well, that's what you were doing with Caitlyn Jenner.
That's what we're doing with
I
Caitlyn Jenner.
affirm and admire you
That's right.
in these ways.
Yeah, and it's
That's right.
alignment and empathy, and that's
right.
beautiful.
That's right. So I force my students to say it. I
Andy, you do not have a PhD in marital communication. All right, so
Sure don't.
just pipe down.
Got a microphone though.
Oh, and that's all we need these days, right?
That's right.
but you don't have a team in the playoffs.
Oh,
That's okay, because neither do you.
That's right.
oh, wow.
But may I just say to the
Wow.
listeners that we have 10 Stanley Cups.
Yes.
10. Detroit has 10.
And let me say to the other 98% of the listeners, who gives a rip? All right, but go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
All right, so finding common ground is the middle one.
Okay, common ground. Tim, I love that you love hockey. I
Yes,
love that.
yeah.
I love that you love sports.
Yep.
I love sports.
Yep.
Your sport sucks. My sport is better. Is that how it goes?
No, I like. There's a guy named C.S. Lewis I like.
Oh,
he's
boy.
a Christian writer. He's a Christian thinker. He says this: friends look in the same direction.
Mm.
So by the way, if all I say is, hey, we all care about having community members that feel like they're part of the community, right? Then I can stand alongside a person who's transgendered. We all feel like marriage is a very special entity.
Right.
And we all want to have flourishing marriages, right? That's finding common ground. So common theory, you can break all of it down into saying start with points of agreement and
Right.
move towards points of disagreement.
All right.
So eventually I'm going to say to the person who advocates same-sex marriage, right? There's going to come a point I have to jump off. I have to say, listen, we found a lot of common ground, but at the end of the day, my interpretation of the Bible, and it's not the only one there is, right? There's really smart people who disagree with me, but based on my interpretation, I'm just going to have to say, I don't think God condones same-sex marriage. But when we get to that point in the conversation is going to be absolutely crucial how much work has been done before you get to those points of disagreement.
But then someone could say, well, okay, then that's just a nice tool to make your bottom line more palatable.
And
That's all you've done.
And I would say, you know what? Take a look at our political system today, and that's not a bad goal, right?
True.
Right? No. So, but I'm saying, Mike, is that I'm establishing the relational level. I'm not minimizing that. Right? Again, if I'm just blowing smoke, right? If I'm just saying, yeah, I'm being kind to you, and because I don't really like you, I don't really respect you, but I'm going to say I do because then it makes my bottom line more effective. Well, then of course that's horrible communication.
Right.
But if I honestly do admire you, if I honestly feel like George Clooney, right? I just saw an interview with George Clooney.
Lots of quotes.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got Longfellow,
Longfellow.
feminists, theologians.
You brought in
Jewish
Janet
wisdom
Jackson.
literature. I didn't quote her.
No, you didn't.
Because I didn't
quote her.
have to.
No, you're right.
Because it's Miss Jackson if you're nasty. Or is it Janet if you're nasty? What is it? Okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So let's say George Clooney, right? George to his friends.
Yeah.
No, George Clooney. Let's say we get together and have lunch. Okay, there's a ton of things I disagree with about George Clooney. If I wanted to, that lunch, start to finish, could be one big disagreement.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
But I sit down, and what can I honestly respect him for? Well, I respect any public individual, any Hollywood elite that takes his or her time and platform and helps people. So, George Clooney is huge about forgiving debt, third world debt. Angela Jolie is really...
I've not followed George Clooney's career.
I would have just said Ocean's 11. But
But so start there. Say,
Right,
hey, here's
right.
what I admire.
Right.
I admire the fact that you're an activist. I admire the fact that you care about this country. And you don't just care about this country, you care about countries that often we never read about. Listen, I admire what you're doing. Even if at the end we're going to disagree on the specifics of what you're doing, I can start off by saying, you know what? I love people who are passionate about this country. I love people who are passionate about religion. I love people who ask good, hard questions. That's not blowing smoke,
Right.
but that's starting with saying, listen, I think we have a lot in common here, that we can actually sit down, have a coffee, and have a great conversation. Because I don't disrespect you. I do respect you enough to honestly disagree with you when the time comes.
Okay, so I've done your first 3 steps.
Yes.
I've listened. I've found I've heard the backstory. I've
That's
found
right.
common ground.
Yep.
Look at me repeating back the steps.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Boom.
Boom.
And then the 4th step's a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, here's the problem is that people want, okay,
I want a script.
I want a script.
I want a script.
And your 4th step doesn't seem very scripted. Here's what the 4th step is. It's
Tell me.
answering one basic question.
Okay.
With this person, at this time, under these circumstances, what is the one thing I should say? So with this person, again, what's my history with this person?
Right.
If it's my teenage son and we butt heads all the time, I just hit
As
the
an
microphone.
example-
I got
as
so
an
excited, I
example
hit the microphone.
of butting ahead.
Right. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
boom, boom, boom. Okay, with this person. So my history with this person is we always have an argument. Well, for this conversation, we never raised our voices. So maybe the one thing I want to say to this person is, hey, this was actually a really pleasant conversation. You gave me something to think about. And now in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'd rip apart that point. And when you said that was absolutely wrong, and I can prove that was wrong. But no, because of our history, this was a really pleasant conversation. And I think it's great just to acknowledge that. And we can have a conversation later.
Okay.
So this person at this time, right, it's the end of lunch. It's the end of, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, but I never brought up my one killer point.
I'm usually good to hear things after about 4 Coors Lights. And that's when I'm very open. I don't have
you've
4.
had none, so we
I've
know
had
this
4.
isn't sinking in at all.
I don't drink 4 of them.
But say to a person heading into a really difficult conversation, by the way, what was your goal?
Right.
What was the goal of the conversation?
I would never be able to answer that question. I don't have a goal except to get my point across.
Yes, and maybe most people would say, I wanted to win this argument about
Yeah,
finances.
yeah.
I wanted to win the argument about the kid's schedule or
Right.
win the argument about Donald Trump or somebody. Okay, we call that a topic goal.
Okay.
My goodness, there's other goals. There's relational goals. There's face
I
saving.
want to feel close to you.
I want, yeah. Well, yeah, we had a great moment, and
Right.
and this relationship is really important to me.
Yep.
And a face-saving goal is, hey, you know what? I'm going to protect this person.
Oh, is that the front door?
Oh,
Mrs.
In and out,
Erie.
In and out burgers.
Mrs. Erie coming home with In and Out and none for Mikey. Okay, I love you. Hi, Hannah. We're now in a recruiting studio that does not have a door that shuts.
That's right.
So we're just open to the elements right now.
And putting up glass is far too expensive.
Hello, exactly. And sometimes, yeah, I wanted it to be a safe room because sometimes my wife gets angry. I see your eye, Hannah. She's got a sty in her eye. She was just, Hannah, do you want to say hello to the internet? Okay. All right, there we go. Tim, back to you. 4-step, fuzzy.
Yeah, so what's your goal? Well, that's discernment. People say, what should I say? Well, I don't know. I need to know your history with this person.
Right.
I need to know the circumstances. I need to know...
Timing.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's hard. That requires discernment. And
Right.
it's situation specific rather than me just walking in and saying, we actually have a term for this in comm theory. We call it agenda anxiety. I walk in and, I've been waiting to talk about finances forever. right? In this relationship, right? I've been waiting finally to talk about us being overcommitted or talk about the church we go to or something. So when we sit down, it's like note to self, I've got 10, I've ordered them. I went to Kinko's, I got colored charts ready to go.
Right.
And by golly, we may never have this conversation again. So I'm saying every single thing I've ever wanted to say to you when it comes to finances. And that creates a defensive climate in a heartbeat. It's like note to self, never talk to this person about finances.
So hearing all this, like the two things I'm wondering, A, with what you just said, how did we get there? To like why because in the church that definitely feels like that all the time. You know, like, okay, I'm meeting this person for the first time. I may never get to talk to them again. Right. I look at, my commission as a Christian, man, I better be ready to share the gospel. If I see the door, I'm jumping through.
That's right.
I mean, I feel like we have to admit something as a culture where we're at so we can even become genuine in our posture when we approach people. Because I can imagine a lot of people out there like, well, I'm just not even interested in being that genuine. And it's like why? Well, that's what I know. That's what I've been told to do. I feel like I've been taught that that's how I needed to think going into conversations. And we're saying that's a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, Andy, that's a great question. I think if we look at the New Testament church, it was embedded in communities. Right? Think of Antioch, which had massive sewage problems, massive road problems. Well, guess what? If you're part of Antioch, they're your problems.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean the non-Christians have a sewage problem and the Christians don't. We both have a sewage problem. So I think the pressure comes off a little bit of having to say everything in one conversation when we're doing life together.
Yeah.
Which means I'm going to see you next week.
Right.
But sometimes we're so segregated that the Christian and non-Christian communities really don't interact that often. So when I finally do interact with you and lo and behold, the topic comes up, I now feel like, oh man, I got to take this because it may be years or ever if it ever comes up. If you're doing life together, if your kids are playing Pop Warner football together, if you're helping with blood drives together, helping with the homeless issue together, well, guess what? Things come up.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're missing today is too much we're isolated in us versus them. We have two Breas, not one, right? So we need to all do life together, and I think that really helped the New Testament church.
Okay. So did you get an answer on that, Andy?
Yeah.
And I think, Tim, one of the interesting things you say this: we engage others with the goal of setting them straight. Yeah. And it in a world of social media, so I'm interested. I want to do a couple of podcasts at some point exploring how to make Jesus beautiful using social media, because I think we make Jesus very ugly. Yes. A lot of us do, myself included. And you don't have a smartphone, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, I don't.
And that's because you're poor. As a calm theorist, there's not big paying
He's
jobs.
got so much smart in there. He's like, I just had to carry a dumb phone.
Right. I am a smartphone.
That's
I don't need one.
I don't need to look it up. I'll just think.
Yeah.
But you stay off of social media.
No.
Oh,
I don't know, but
Oh.
I don't want social media in my back pocket 24/7. That's why I don't have a smartphone.
But you have it on your computer then.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
So how would this apply in a social media world? How does this apply in a Facebook world where, I see something that's shooting at Obama and I know my brother-in-law is just gonna hate it and I think they're nuts, so I'm just gonna share it, without comment. I mean, how do we make Jesus beautiful on social media? Recognizing, because I've had people ask, well, should I not share? And my answer is yes.
Yes.
You should not
share.
share.
Yes. I totally agree.
Don't.
Yeah. Yes.
Just don't. It is not the place for nuance. It is not the place for listening. It is the place for just alienating and cementing people.
Define for me self-control.
Right.
So go back to question number 4. With this person at this time under these circumstances.
Okay.
So if social media doesn't allow you to present nuance in a loving fashion, both the relational side of communication and the content, if it doesn't allow me to be respectful, careful, and acknowledge another person's communication, then guess what? It's not the best place to have those kind of conversations.
Right. But it's pretty easy just to hit share or like
and
let it go.
It's so gratifying.
And let it go. Yeah, exactly.
And then throw in what we call disinhibition. Disinhibition is, hello. In Latin, it means disinhibition. No, disinhibition means when we're face to face.
After about 4 Coors Lights, I interact with disinhibition.
All right, so here's what disinhibition means. when you and I are face to face, I at least have to deal with the consequences, right? If I
Right, if
raise
you're
my
gonna say
voice,
something
right?
crazy,
If I
yes.
call you a name,
Yeah.
it's kind of awkward. We're there, right?
Right.
I am getting my black belt in kung fu. I do think I
Lord.
could take you.
Oh, Lord.
I do think it'd be
There's-
bloody.
there's
It'd
no
be
way.
bloody. It would
There's
be
no way.
hard.
I outweigh you by how much?
It doesn't matter. See, that's the beauty thing about kung fu.
No.
I use your strength.
No,
I use your
like
momentum.
Po. I'm like Po from Kung Fu Panda, bro.
All right, so
Okay,
disinhibition.
you
Disinhibition is.
I like how you casually drop that in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting my black belt in
just,
Kung Fu.
Yeah, just yeah.
Okay, disinhibition, go.
Online, I don't have to deal with any of it.
Right.
I hit send, boom, I don't care. Right? It was hot, it was heated. I used a word I probably shouldn't have used. If we were sitting across from each other, I wouldn't have used it.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I'm not anti-technology. I'm not anti-social media. But I do think we need to really step back and say, I don't know if this is the right medium to have the conversation I really want to have. So some people say, well, then we're abdicating the whole space to. Well, yeah, we abdicate the space to people who are angry.
If you cannot have Jesus loving,
That's right.
people honoring conversation on social media, then just stop. At least with things that will alienate. So
That's right.
I'm a huge fan of posting. So we post our podcasts, or I post silly stuff, or whatever. But I'm never just gonna post something that says, "Oh, I hate Obama," or "I'm a huge fan of Obama," or "Here's Bernie's tax plan," and "Here's Hillary's ugliness in terms of her, political record," or whatever it is. I mean, I just don't ever do that because there's no way to boundary that with anything else.
If you can't speak the truth in love,
Don't
you
speak.
can't speak the truth. If you can't do the love part,
Your finger is shaking at me right now.
Yes.
It's pointed at me.
this is actually called Monkey Fist 1. in
Yeah, there's
Kung Fu.
energy. There's energy coming out. You're gonna just
Rebuked.
fly across the room
Oh
here.
my
No,
goodness.
but you know what I mean?
I'm hiding.
If you can't do, it's truth and love. And if you can't do the love part, then the medium isn't allowing you to do the love part.
Right.
Then maybe the medium is the problem. So
Right.
let's not
Yeah.
be so quick to jump in and like maybe in a blog you can take time and nuance one point or something like that. And
Right.
but Twitter can be it can be great daily contacts with each other. It can even be a way to have fun with
Yeah,
people.
it can be entertaining,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
conversations can happen. But I mean, if
Yeah.
we're just saying we're putting it up on a layer of like making Jesus beautiful,
Right.
which we all would agree, it's like this isn't just some 50 character thing we can say and it just happens.
That's right.
That's the bottom line is to communicate that idea. We have to be able to say there is a right or like a better way to do it than others.
For me, there's so much teaching in Paul that Christians are called to make the teachings of Jesus attractive.
Yeah.
And none of us carry that. We care more about being right. We care more about setting others straight.
Yeah.
We care more about enforcing our liberty than we do about making Jesus beautiful or exercising compassion or listening. And I feel like for me, I mean, I wrestle with this all the time. The temptation is to use social media to just take shots at things.
That's right.
And it's so impossible to do that well.
What does Peter say? Peter says, when insulted, flat out insulted, man. He doesn't sugarcoat it at all. You've been insulted. I want you to bless that person. Bless him. And
You are a bald hockey loving turd.
And let me give you a hug.
Yes,
Right,
that just happened.
But boy, we don't like that. That is to us like craziness. Like Jesus, turn the other cheek, go the second mile, and we're like,
Right.
no, we're not doing that. Because
Right.
I'll get walked on.
Right.
I will get walked on, and that's what's most important. Is I feel like I'm not going to let my beliefs get walked on. So I just feel like we need. So here's my favorite thing I say to people.
No. Now you're quoting yourself. You've quoted Clooney and Longfellow.
Foucault.
Well, you didn't quote him, but I know.
I mentioned
know
him.
who he was.
I
Yes,
mentioned him.
lots of mentions, lots of name dropping. Black belt. Now, the intro to this sentence was. Here's the favorite thing I say.
Right.
So just with that in mind,
Here
drop
is.
it.
I
Drop
feel-
it like
I feel
it's hot.
I feel the pressure now. I really do. So Confucius. No. No.
Miyagi said.
So here's like every once in a while I do radio, right? Which is a crazy medium in and of itself sometimes. It's like, hey, we got 40 seconds left. Hey, in this last minute. So, wow, what about global warming? What about, So here's a word that I just have adopted, and it's frustrating. I just say pass.
Pass?
Pass.
Pass?
Yeah, you asked me 1 minute to address global warming. I'm just going to say pass. I don't have time to do it justice.
Okay.
So I'm going to pass.
Pass.
When I get asked publicly about really complex, hard issues, I just simply say, you know what? This isn't a 40-second talk. This isn't a 5-minute talk.
Right.
This is a 5-hour talk. So I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
And they're like,
and just not get
no.
trapped in.
No, that's my question.
Yeah, that's my question. Well, I'm not going to answer it. This is not the right time, circumstance, for me to launch into this, right? It's just too complex. That's what I hate about political debates today, right? They're like 2 minutes, and then the buzzer starts going off,
right?
And they have to condense.
Yeah, it's soundbite.
But man, it is complex. It is nuanced. It's like, he's kind of right. She's kind of right. And in public, in radio today or talk show, whatever, they're like, no, we need you to be the position. We need you to be the right. We need you to be the left, not the nuanced middle. We didn't invite anybody from the nuanced middle. Yeah. And that's the problem with America today. And as Christians, we just can't feed into that, I don't think.
So what do you think about global warming? We've got 60 seconds.
Bad.
Bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's bad. I'd be okay with global cooling myself. I'm all for less air conditioning. All right. So, Tim, as we wrap up, want to encourage people to grab the book. You go in, you quote a lot more people in that. and it really is a very interesting read, because on the surface of it, I would go, well, yeah, of course I listen. Nope, don't listen. I'm always thinking about what I'm going to say in response. So of course I find common ground, but I never lead with that. I'm always, you're always evaluating first. You're never believing the best about another, blah, 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 blah. So that's one place people can find you. Where else? Where else can people go to find you?
Well, I teach at Biola University in La Mirada, California.
Go Pirates.
What are we, by the way?
You're the Eagles.
Oh, we're the Eagles.
Yes.
My bad. Okay,
Yes.
my bad. We're
Wow.
the Eagles.
Wow.
Sorry.
Wait, you guys are the sports guys?
Yeah,
we're
Well, they don't have a hockey team, so evidently he doesn't care.
Andy, you'd be a former sports person at least for another year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started something called the Center for Marriage and Relationships. Most Americans, if you were to ask them, hey, what's the most important thing you want to get out of life? They would say, you know what? I really do want to have a good marriage, and I want to have a family.
Right.
So we've started something called the Center for Marriage and Relationships, where we take the current research that's out there, right? Great studies that can help people, but we blend it with the timeless truth of scriptures, and it's been great to do that. One of our big initiatives is we're going to take all this marriage conference stuff, and we're going to take it to inner city Detroit and give it away for free. No cost whatsoever to attend our conferences. We're going to provide food, childcare, everything, because unfortunately the divorce rate is really linked to people who can't afford to go to conferences. That, right, economically, life's just really rough, so we're going to tackle that. We are launching a podcast. You've motivated us, Mike.
Yes.
Andy.
What's the name of it?
It's called Subversive. No.
Yes.
It's called The Art of Relationships. And the fact that it's not just science, right? It's not just give me 10 steps. How you apply that science, how you apply things, man, there's an art to that.
Yes.
And so we're calling it The Art of Relationships. We're going to launch May 11th.
Whoa.
And would love for people to check us out. You can go to cmr.biola.edu. So cmr.biola.edu.
Nice. All right, so check that out. That podcast is launching in a couple of weeks from when we're recording. And Tim, believe me, when you see him, you'll understand why he prefers podcasting and radio over public speaking. You get a feel for that.
But absolutely prefers kung fu.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I could take you. He says.
Come on.
Okay, so what we want to do is we just want to thank you as always for listening. Love your feedback on what you're hearing in this, and particularly those of you who are not Jesus followers. I'm really curious as to what you were hearing in this, because we hear, and I think we would all agree that the climate of the way we talk in our world is just the worst, and it needs to be so dramatically improved. And Jesus people are actually adding to the ugliness by and large, and so we want to get better. at that. But I'm curious as to what you heard and what you think about this. Check out his book. Check out the podcast. Andy, any last thoughts? Should we have a bit of mourning?
Yeah, we can. Let's just take a moment of silence.
What's the duck song? Didn't you have a duck song that you did in a podcast?
I did. Yeah,
Yep.
the official inaugural season theme song.
That was from the movie?
No, that was written. It was from the movie, and then they made it for the team.
Oh, so it was from the movie.
Yeah, that's true. It actually was from the movie.
Okay, all right. So now that we've got truth, let's talk about love.
Okay,
Andy, I love that you like sports.
thank you.
And that you like games that pretend to be sports.
Yeah.
And I just affirm all of that.
Yes, I like this game we're playing right now.
All right. So
Detroit has a song. Detroit has a song.
Subtly insulting me.
It's
You know what? When we're done, I'm just gonna give you a hug.
Bless me.
Burning coals.
So,
Love it.
So,
Love it.
So last time we did a blessing from Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
And so I think we should do a blessing today from Toy Story. Because we don't listen, the atheists turn it off at this point when we get to the blessing. So we wanna include you. So we did Flash Gordon. Let's do Toy Story. All right? Okay. Are you ready? So wherever you are, close your eyes, and just hear these words spoken from the prophet Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. Okay. God bless you. Even if you're not a believer in God, may the imaginary spaghetti monster bless you. And so thanks for letting us be a part of your life. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Vox, the Mike Erre podcast. Be sure to like Mike on Facebook at facebook.com/official Mike Erre. Follow Mike on Twitter and Periscope at Mike Erre for live interaction and ongoing Q&A. Don't forget to visit subversivekingdom.com for further engagement and information about Mike.